I'm Author Function,
I'm Galvan.
and this is the Secret Boss Podcast, where we talk about the best auteurs in gaming, whether they deserve that title or not. And today we are talking about Yoshimiru Hoshi, who is often credited with destroying HAL Laboratories, but that's a lie. That's false. And we're gonna spend this episode spending the entire time saying how that's wrong. By the entire time I mean like 5 minutes at the beginning, and this is probably about it.
Well, I actually did some research on Wikipedia, and it said that he actually did destroy HAL Laboratories, so I'm going to be using that information to argue
Yeah,
against you the
he went
entire
to HAL
hour.
Laboratories with a sledgehammer and just wrecked it one by one.
He made it Hell Laboratories because it was in hell, because it died. Get it?
Yeah. I feel bad talking about this before the actual creator because this is what his one game is often known for in the West. But Metal Slader Glory, Yoshimiru Hoshi's basically only game that he has directed and released, was developed by HAL Laboratory, which is often associated with Nintendo and Kirby and Smash Bros. This game is often credited with bankrupting the developer and forcing them to become a second party developer for Nintendo, but that isn't the case. That is a urban legend. And I think what's interesting about that is that this game was basically made entirely by one person, almost entirely by Yoshimiru Hoshi. He did the writing, directing, art, story. Basically, the only things he didn't do are programming, advertising, and music. Otherwise, this is just singularly a Yoshimiru Hoshi joint.
And would you care to speak more on that rumor if you know anything else about it? About like how it came up in the first place or like what the actual reality was?
Yeah, so Satoru Iwata, who was the producer for this game and was kind of a big name at HAL Laboratory and is a big name in uh, modern, not modern Nintendo, 2000s, early 2010s
Holy shit,
Nintendo
dude.
before he died. Yeah, I mean,
I like how you had to specify. No, not modern Nintendo. Because, he's dead.
yeah, I mean, what else am I supposed to say about that? Yeah, but he during one of his interviews with Iwata Asks, he was talking about this game and how there was like some kind of translation issue, I want to say, where it seemed like he was showing Metal Slader Glory as the reason that HAL Laboratory failed. That wasn't the case. He was talking about how it had like a high advertising budget. At the same time, he was also talking about how it was like a big game that was pretty much the last game that they made before they went bankrupt. There was kind of a misattribution for this game causing that bankruptcy, whereas basically everything that Yoshimiru Oshii has said in the future has been like, no, that's not the case. It had a normal advertising budget, and because there wasn't a lot of people working on it, it was basically just him. There wasn't like a high labor cost in developing it, and speculation is that this game came out at like the bubble bursting in Japan's economy. So it was just kind of like a correlation there, not necessarily causation. It was going to be inevitable, but this happened to come out, and it wasn't like a huge budget game, but it took a very long time to make. Anyway, Metal Slader Glory. This is a game that came out in 1991 for the Famicom, which is very late for a Famicom game to come out. 1991 is a year after the Super Famicom came out. It is, I think, 3 years after the Genesis came out, and this came out for the Famicom as like a big name title. And it was also a Japanese adventure game, visual novel, and there was a historical trend for these kinds of visual novels at the start of the Famicom system's lifetime, starting with the Porpio serial murder case and a lot of games that would come afterward, like Famicom Detective Club. So this kind of came out at the end of that wave when that whole trend had died down, and it's like, oh, hey, here's another kind of sci-fi mystery visual novel that's coming out for the Famicom, and everyone had kind of moved on to the rest, which is really sad because this is a really interesting game, and it has a singular vision that I cannot believe happened way back then, and I think it's just a fascinating game in my opinion.
Yeah, and I had heard about this game before, but had not been incentivized to play it because, well, I don't know. I have too many things on my hands and too many games to play. So it's nice that this podcast, it helped force me down one road because I played this and I really enjoyed it. Spoiler alert. I was about to ask you what you thought of it, but it would be funny if you said all that and you were like, no, I actually hate it personally. I subjectively dislike it, but I think it's impressive.
I mean, I think that's a valid opinion to have. There are parts of this game that I don't particularly like, but I do think it is really interesting. It makes a lot of directorial choices and storytelling choices that feel incredibly novel for that era, and I feel like it's amazing that it was released on the Famicom. First of all, it looks incredible. Metal Slader Glory looks fantastic. It's some of the
Oh,
best
yeah.
pixel art I've seen on the Famicom NES. I don't want to say that it was like graphically impressive. This came out the same year as Another World or Out of This World, which had some vector-based graphics which look really good, and some other Amiga games had come out by then. So basically, on consoles, this is graphically impressive. But I want to make a separation between art style and graphics, because while this is not a super graphically impressive game, the art style is incredible. It's some of the best pixel art I've seen ever. Um, and you can tell that it was like made by an artist, and they were working within the Famicom's art limitations in a very, very impressive way.
And animation too. I mean, this game has some incredible animation, even in tiny things like a character like pulling out their keycord or stuff like that. Even things like that don't appear in like normal visual novels to this day because it's just too much effort to put into. But here they are doing it back in 1991. I don't know how much Yoshimiru has in common with anime. I know he was a manga artist, but it does use the same kind of like limited animation kind of mindset when it comes to getting the maximum effect out of the smallest kinds of things. The last battle in this game is a whole entire separate thing. Yeah, we'll get to that when we get to that.
Yeah, so quick notes on the plot. I'm not super impressed by the plot, to be honest.
Okay,
So I'm just
me
going to go
neither.
over it quickly.
I also think it's bumpy and generic, but I also think there are some like neat things, but I'm not sure if that's because I was trying to read too positively into it.
Yeah, so Metal Slader Glory is about this group of three young adults who happen upon a mech in a sci-fi future where mechs are pretty common, and they're like, "Oh, what is this mech?" And they try to unravel a mystery behind its history, and you go to different space colonies, talk to people, do some investigations, and eventually you discover a conspiracy behind this mech and the universe and government around it. On a pure plot structural level, I think it's very competent. I think it's interesting. I think it's enjoyable.
He's
But I
trying to
also
say that
don't.
it's generic. He's trying to say it's
Yeah,
generic.
it is generic. And I don't mean generic necessarily badly, but like generic as in it is adhering to the genre in a way that doesn't stand out, to be honest.
If you want to talk about this game in an unfavorable way, which is a way you could talk about it, you could kind of say that the game is kind of like a tech demo in a way for future games that could be like it.
Yeah, I think that's fair, especially as a Famicom game whose stories weren't often super ambitious, and if they were ambitious, then they would not go as far as the intent. Um, but this game is just it is simple, but is conveyed very well. It is conveyed visually in a way that most games aren't. It is doing a lot of interesting gameplay maneuvers, which are still like pretty atypical for a lot of adventure games and visual novels now. And it just really has a strong vision behind it. And I want to get into the specifics later, but I just really want to sell this game on the vision behind it and the person who created it, as
Yeah,
opposed to like world building or something.
yeah, it's hard to talk about this game like verbally instead of showing you parts of it because like I mean, despite what I said about it being like possibly a tech demo, which I mean I could believe honestly if somebody told me that, I think most of the game comes in to the fact that you can just tell that love was poured into it. Like in small details they didn't have to add, but they added because they could basically. This is basically a person putting everything they could into a game, and it really shows, even if it feels in some ways also like in the grand scheme of things like a stepping stone for other things, like even it intended itself to be a stepping stone.
I want to compare the visuals of this game with some older visual novels, adventure games in the past. So on the Famicom, if you were making an adventure mystery game, you're probably inspired the poor PS serial murder case, and that game, on the Famicom at least, and a lot of its followers would have a background image in the top left, a text box on the bottom, and actions to take on the top right. And the top left, a very small, like a fourth of the screen, the image would be a background showing the setting where it is, and the one person that you're talking to. And they are going to be facing the screen in a way that is pretty typical for most visual novels now. It's just background, person, and if you're lucky, they're moving around on the screen a little bit. Whereas with this game, you're using the whole screen for a lot of it. Sometimes it'll just be focused on like the middle, but it is really trying to make you focus on the entire setting. There is a background and there is a sprite on top of it, but the sprites move, they wander throughout the space, and they are interacting with the background in a way. People will move in the background, and you're gonna have to like time your actions in order to like get people's attention who are moving in the background, which is fascinating. And there's also that a portrait that is in the bottom left, like you might see in a lot of RPGs. The presentation is just fantastic. Like the Famicom, I think, could only have 25 colors on the screen at once, and it makes use of that very well. Every scene like has its own tone by focusing on mostly reds or greens or blues. It's a lot like Soderbergh's Traffic. I want to say there's no Mexico that's yellow, sadly, but
Do you
uh,
think Soderbergh played Metal Slader Glory, and this is where you got the idea?
100%. Yeah, so it is conveying a tone through color in a way that I would took another like at least 5 years for me to really see consistently in games.
And I just want to say, I mean, this is speaking as someone completely uninformed in our education. I do think this can be linked a lot to his experience as a manga, a mangaka. I mean, even just the tone thing is, mangaka is black and white, so he is interested in drawing monochrome. But even besides that, I see a lot of boxy framing when it comes to the entire like how the game screen is structured. Like you said, there are a lot of different tricks they do with squares, character portraits appearing on the left and right, flashing left and right to convey shot, reverse shot, and also just things like there's this amazing moment during a monologue where it's one image, but it starts off really small in the center, and as the character talks, the image keeps growing and growing to reveal more of the image. And this plays a lot with like unconventional manga framing, basically. The fact that it's not just one panel format that you have to have for manga. And I think this is only something a mangaka can do when you have this much experience with like different boxes and where to put things to convey visual information and that kind of thing. And I think that's incredible. I don't know. That's what's nice about auteurism is you get to see people from different walks of life applying their skills in different ways to one medium. Again, I'm not a mangaka though, so I could be talking entirely out of my ass here.
Right. And another great aspect of this is the sound design. Usually, if you're seeing text in an old game, there's either going to be no sound or there's going to be some little beep boops along with it. I don't know. First thing that came to mind was Animal Crossing, some lower form of that. But Metal Slader Glory. Yeah.
No, I just made some Animal Crossing noises. Keep going.
But Metal Slader Glory like has different text sounds for each character, and I think that they're connected to the vowels that each character is saying. It is a more in-depth text sound speaking voice, I want to say, than you would see in a lot of story-based games at the time. I want to like make a big deal out of this, and it's probably not the first. It's always hard to find the first of anything, but I think that it stands out as an early example of conveying speech through the text sounds in a way that I think is like very influential. I want to say this is like a cult classic game, which has a very small but dedicated fan base, and I assume that it's had a pretty big impact on other adventure games and visual novels. I can't really say that for sure, because this is just speculation, but I feel like this is so innovative that I have to imagine it's very influential. So I do want to talk about that small distribution. This game was made almost entirely by Yoshimiru Hoshi. There were 3 programmers and a musician who worked on the game. The story is that he was doing some artwork on some other games that HAL Laboratory was doing, and Iwata saw Yoshimiru like designing his own sort of illustrations and pixel art, and he was so wowed by his ability to do that on a Famicom. He was like, "Oh my god, we gotta greenlight a game for this guy." He was like, "Okay, make this game. We're gonna give you the access and resources to do it." And by that, I mean they weren't going to pay him, but they were going to let him work on his game using these computers. Um, Yoshimiru was living with his parents at the time, and he was working on this game for free.
Oh
And he
my
spent
god.
4 years working on it. It was basically like him writing the story, doing the visuals, and going to the programmers and going like, "Hey, can we make this work? Can we do this?" And they're like, "Yeah, sure, we can do that." And they worked on this game for so long that it came out at like the end of the Famicom's life cycle after the Super Famicom had already come out. And when it was released, it was so expansive and intensive that they needed to have a special chip that was also being used on Super Mario Bros. 3 that only Nintendo was making. And they're like, "Oh, hey, Nintendo, can we get like a little discount on making this chip? Can we make our own game using this?" And they're like, "Yeah, sure." So they gave a very select number of chips to make this game, and only, I want to say, 10 to 15,000 copies were released. Like when we talked about Super Mario Brothers, millions of Mario Brothers cartridges were released. But for Metal Slader Glory, you only had a few thousand to work with. So it was not a financial blockbuster. It wasn't going to help HAL Laboratories get out of bankruptcy. It wasn't exactly going to save the studio. The people who played it were very dedicated. They really enjoyed it. They were really impressed by its artwork and story on the Famicom, but that was kind of short reaching because it had a very small audience. Only a few people could actually play this game, and it was only released in Japan, which is really too bad. But then they got a second chance. They were like, "Okay, we really like this game. We want to release it to more people." So they started to work on a remake for the Super Famicom. Yoshimiru would work on this again. He would add some extra scenes. He would redo all the artwork to fit in better with the Super Famicom's, I want to say, better graphics, but I hate saying those words. And also his improved art style, in his opinion. I really think the first game looks better, but the remake also looks great. And released it again. God, I want to say it was what was the release? The director's cut was
I don't
released
remember.
on Nintendo Power Flash cartridges, which were like downloadable games that you had to get through a physical store. I think the more famous game that was
Oh
released this
no.
way is Fire Emblem 5, Fire Emblem Thracia 776.
I did
And
not
both
know
of these
that. The
games
downloadable store.
failed terribly. And like this was just a horrible way to distribute games. So the remake of Metal Slader Glory was released on the Super Famicom in the year 2000, late year 2000, in November. This is a Super Famicom game that is being released within a year of Halo. And no matter how good your Super Famicom game is going to look, and this is has fantastic pixel art. It looks amazing for a Super Famicom game. But 3D had already come out. People were making games that look pretty good in 3D, pretty realistic in 3D. So when this is coming out, it feels really behind the times. I think it's like probably the worst time for a game like this to come out, which is very sad.
I really cannot emphasize how much it just looks like a normal Super Famicom game, like a normal SNES game, and it was coming out at the turn of the millennium. Yeah, that's crazy though. I didn't know about all of that. You basically talked for like 2 minutes, and I was like, over that 2 minute period, I went from, oh, Satoru Iwata is just some guy I don't know, to what the hell? 'Cause this guy basically just like pranked this guy Yoshimiru by ruining his career. He's like, yeah, I really love your artwork on the Famicom. I'm gonna send you on a 4 years long task that's not gonna turn you any profits. You're gonna release like 1,000 copies around the country, and then I'm gonna make you do it again, and it's gonna happen again. That's actually crazy. I feel so
Yeah,
bad
I
for
mean,
Yoshimiru.
I'm not going to defend not paying him, but I do think that it's good that he was allowed to make this game.
Oh yeah,
Because,
it's bad luck to be clear. I'm
okay,
not
yeah,
saying
bad luck.
Iwata knew all this in advance,
Like, man, I gotta
but
fuck this guy up.
Iwata really hated him, so he just came up with an excuse to make him these games.
Hating him by letting him do what he wants as an artist.
The dark side revealed. Iwata granted this guy lots of free reign to make his own game twice. That's fucked
God,
up,
that'd be
man.
terrible. But the remake was made because people at HAL Laboratories really had faith in the project in the original game, and they wanted more people to play it. And they didn't really get around to doing that because the distribution was so bad for both releases, which is just absolutely nuts. It's so sad. But it finally came out a few years later for the Wii Virtual Console. And this is a shorter period of time between the Wii Virtual Console and the SNES release, and the Famicom release and the Super Famicom release. So that's sad. I think it came out in 2007. I want to say in the Wii Virtual Console. I don't know for sure. But this is when the game was actually getting played by more people because people had the Wii and there was no kind of distribution problems with the Wii downloadable systems. So people were like, "Oh wow, this is a really cool game." And I'm really glad that people were finally sort of rediscovering this little hidden gem and it's really sad that it took such a long time. But during this re-release, Yoshimiru was like really happy that people were like being able to play the game again, and he was really hoping to work on another game in the series to like continue this work. He was also like working on a manga later on to continue like the storyline. He was like really dedicated to this project, and this would have been like almost 20 years since he first started working on it. So far has not ended up being able to make that sequel game. I'm still holding out hope. They made a Famicom Detective Club third game 40 years after the original release, so I think there's still a chance, but we'll have to see what gets approved. I really hope Yoshimiro can do that. He's still on social media and he's still talking about this game and his work and ideas for it. He's even on Western social media talking in English to people who might not be familiar with the game and like sort of interacting with them. And it is so much dedication to this one game. I think I really admire it. Even if it's not my favorite game in the world, I think that is incredibly impressive. It's innovative. It is just such a singular vision, and he's still like going for it, still getting people to get eyes on his work, and I admire that so much. I really want to talk about this guy.
I think the new game, I mean, it's a far-fetched. I think they still haven't released Mother 3 like officially yet. But I don't know. There is still like hope basically. I mean, the translation for the remake, the SNES remake only came out this year, 2025. There's still stores selling Metal Slader Glory merch from Yoshimiru, and he's still, I think, getting money. Hopefully he's getting enough money. So yeah, I also hope.
Imagine if like he got fucked at every level for not getting money on this game, like not getting money when he was working on it, not getting money when it was released, not getting money when it's re-released, and not getting money from merch. Like he has to at least be getting money from the manga. I really hope that he got paid for his work at some point.
Unfortunately, the manga he released it requires a special chip to run, and only like 1,000 of those were released. So only 1,000 people could read his manga.
Imagine if it was exclusive to like Nokia cell phones or something.
The new Metal Slader Glory manga exclusive to the Wonder Swan. You can only read it on the Wonder Swan.
In 2012.
Yeah.
I do want to like quickly talk about some individual parts of Metal Slader Glory that we found interesting. That's kind of like disconnected from the narrative of the artist.
Sure. I feel like we haven't really talked much about the game, to be honest.
Yeah,
We just talked about the innovation behind. We're like Nintendo. Like it's only innovation. We're not actually showing the game.
I mean, I think the production is just so fascinating to me that I wanted to get that out up front.
Oh yeah, I agree.
But yeah, the game is also really interesting. Like I said, I want to say one of my favorite parts in this game is that there's a conversation. One of the characters is like speaking. I want to say she's filling out a form or something, while you have to like interview someone else to get information out of them. So it's like a timed section where you're reading what she's doing and you're also interviewing another person on the top and bottom of the screen. It was like a really fascinating moment for me. It's like, I don't think I'd seen this in very many games today, let alone a game in the early 90s. It's like, oh wow, this is a time dialogue section with multiple characters, and the interface is separating these conversations to different parts of the screen. I was like, wow, this is great. I love this moment.
They also extend the moment to parts in the finale, although it is hard to notice, well, because the gap is so wide. But the entire last section of the game is this big finale where you're fighting against enemies, and you have these little downtime moments in between where you get to talk to people while you wait for the next wave to start. And that actually is timed. You could like hypothetically be cut off by enemies before you're able to talk to everybody. It is very funny though to include this in a Famicom game that was designed for children, because they were probably speed reading that motherfucker like so fast. I mean, they barely know how to read, let alone operate a controller. It was probably really tough.
There's also like a dungeon crawling section while we're talking about more traditional gameplay. And
my jaw actually dropped when I got to that part.
Right?
Like, now this is another game.
It is such cool smoke and mirrors. So basically there's this circular room and you're moving through this area, and it shifts, like it's probably only a few frames where it's showing the room like rotating as you go along it. So it's like really efficient that you can go through like this entire labyrinth while still like having this three-dimensional movement. I think that you just kind of have to look at it yourself on a playthrough on YouTube or something, because there is nothing I've seen like it on the Famicom or anything else from this era. It's just such a clever design to do that. Oh, I do want to say that it makes use of the full screen. It's best seen in the sort of opening title screen, where there's like a plane lifting up into the sky through the atmosphere. You see rockets fall off. You can see the weight of the plane as it's moving like back and forth, and you can see the thrust of the rockets, and you can hear like the sound trail off as they go into space and it gets quiet. The limits of the sprites has on the compositions, like you can't show a ton, but is making use of those limitations of the Famicom like really, really well.
I would say this game does scrolling very, very well. Or like when it's scrolling across like large fields, all the stuff done with ships in the final battle. Spoiler alert: the final battle takes place in space. Is basically just like the game going full force when it comes to like, look how fast these things can move. You know, it's great. I love it.
Yeah, while I'm talking about the plane scene, I've watched this plane scene like so many times. When you're on Earth and the shuttle's like picking up speed at the very beginning, you can see stuff going faster and faster and faster, like you would on a plane. On the horizon, stuff is moving on the track. And then as it goes up and up, the atmosphere moves in like a little bit slower than it moved on Earth. And then when you get to the stars are so far in the background that it's just moving very barely. You see movement. You sort of assume the same speed of the shuttle that you're focused on, but you can see that scale of like how much bigger the universe is just in that one like opening section. It's just it's so cool to me. I love this game. I don't love the characters. I don't love a lot of the dialogue, but I love thinking about the visuals behind it.
Just want to say one last thing. If you're willing to play the game, I'm sure it's not going to be a spoiler or that much of a surprise that we're both going to recommend Metal Slader Glory. But I want to specifically recommend the Famicom version over the SNES remake version because, I mean, part of this game's appeal, I don't think the whole of its appeal. I'm not just going to say the game is only impressive because it's technically impressive, but I do feel like part of this game's appeal is that it runs on a Famicom. And once you see it, you will be like, how did this work on a Famicom? The same system that produced like Where's Waldo for the NES. If you want a fun experience, go look up footage of Where's Waldo on the NES and then play Metal Slayer Glory immediately after. But I personally don't want to recommend the Super Famicom version, Metal Slayer Glory Director's Cut, because the cut content, as far as I can tell, is just like a few extra seconds of animation and a few extraneous choices that don't really matter. I don't know. I don't know why there was a necessary like idea to have a director's cut in the first place.
Interesting. I didn't play the Super Famicom version, but I was going to recommend the Famicom version in general, purely by the aesthetics. I just think it looks a lot better, and I do think that is more impressive given the restrictions. It kind of feels like the remake is like, I think a silent film is interesting because it's silent, and if you like dubbed it over, that's what I feel like the Super Famicom version would be like. It's not really as interesting.
Yeah, I would say Metal Slayer Glory is like a triumph of an artist's vision in extremely harsh limitations. And I think to see that, you have to see the limitations.
Right. And these both have fan English translations. They were both only released in Japanese, but you know, fans, they get to that stuff, and I'm really happy they did. I think the Super Famicom version just came out this year, which is great. Thank you so much to the translators. I don't know their names, don't have it up right now, but yeah, I love when fans translate stuff.
Me too. Me too.
Anyway, I think that's all we have to say about this one game and this one creator. So let's move on to the next one. What are we going to be doing, Galvan?
You know, Offer, I'm really disappointed in us.
I'm not.
Well, I'm disappointed in us, and I want to explain to you why. See, what's the opening of this podcast that we always do? This is Secret Boss, the podcast we do about video game auteurs, whether they deserve that title or not. Or not is the key word here. You know, we always are trying to challenge the idea of an auteur by presenting people who don't fit into the category of an auteur. At least that was the original idea I had for the podcast until you came in and fucked it all up by introducing people like Shigeru Miyamoto, obviously an auteur. Christine Love, obviously an auteur. This guy who made this game, which was obviously his vision, a game that he made by himself with 3 programmers and a musician, obviously is an auteur, okay? It's sick. It's sick. And it goes against everything I've worked for, everything I come through here, you know?
You know, well, I have my sick perversions, like liking Mario games. Well, that's just me. It's my little fetish.
Yeah. See, I'm just hearing all this talk about video game auteurs who are obviously auteurs, and I'm just trying to think, like how can we get someone who challenges that kind of label? What about somebody who most people wouldn't call an auteur? Or like somebody who wouldn't call himself an auteur? What about somebody who wouldn't even call himself a video game designer? Who might even argue against the idea that he makes video games in the first place? See, in the 90s, there is this game that was released, a game that may not be considered a game by some people, but was voted to be one of the worst games of all time. Maybe because it spread across email as a kind of possible viral marketing kind of gimmick, and people took some of it to be a virus. That game was called Elf Bowling, and it was and it was a viral marketing campaign made by a person who was not interested in video gaming at all, but simply wanted to promote his marketing firm. And this is how it started, basically.
Yes.
It started as an internet viral sensation for the company mstorm.com. This game was made by Dan Ferguson, or at least it was conceived by this guy named Dan Ferguson. And what you may not know about Dan Ferguson, the creator of Elf Bowling, is that he's went on into creating advert gaming experiences, is what he's called. He is a marketing executive who designs interactive experiences for companies to advertise their games. Let me just list you off some of his most recent works right here. The Superhero Magic with Keebler and Web AR game. This was made to promote the Superman movie made by James Gunn. It's a phone AR game where you move around to find cookies, the Keebler cookies, and then you tap them, and then they play like a Superman jingle.
That's the shit. I love it.
Oh, Pepsi Gladiator 2 movie promotion, where people take pictures of themselves and it photoshops a PNG of a gladiator onto their face, so it looks like they're a gladiator, much like the movie Gladiator 2, which was out at the same time. This is what Dan Ferguson has been doing for decades, and some of his marketing campaigns have won awards, actually. And we're going to be looking over him for a week, and then we're going to try and find an auteurist lens. So that's what we're going to be doing this week. What do you think about that?
I love it. Let's do it. I love it. This is exactly the trash I love.
I've been sitting on this idea for like months now.
I'm glad you're finally getting it out there. This is what our podcast was made for. Let's do it.
It's not just that, though, because I also am pushing another idea, because I want to do a long-term project. If you haven't noticed now, we've been doing generally shorter projects that take like a week to 2 weeks. Sometimes we take a month, but that's just because of our own schedules. I want to do somebody with a larger gameography. So I'm pitching not one, but 2 people today. And we're going to be doing this second person many further episodes down the line. But I just want to announce it now so we can both get started on it. Yeah, I don't have a hook for this person. I wasted all my hook on the opening, on the first person.
That's okay. Keep going.
I ran out of marketing chutzpah on the marketing person, so I'm just going to keep talking about this person. Maybe it's okay that I don't have as much of a marketing gimmick for this person, because they're not really a marketing person in the first place. They've been making games as kind of a hobby while they're going as a day job. The big difference, I think, that would separate them from other hobbyist developers is that this hobbyist developer, she has made 150 video games, I'm pretty sure, about that size. She literally has a spreadsheet to list every single game she's ever made.
Oh, I know who you're talking about.
Long.
Let me guess. Yeah, Sylvie.
Yes, it is Sylvie.
Yeah, we're doing Sylvie.
Yep. Sylvie, she has been called extremely unconventional, going against a lot of gaming conventions. I only started playing her games very recently, and I was completely floored. And it went from, I had to do this one person to, I had to do Sylvie like immediately, because oh my god, her games are kind of crazy, and I've only played like 2.5 of them, basically. Her game Sylvie Line, which is the first one I ever played, was submitted to IGF 2023 as a potential nominee for the award. People like Bennett Foddy and Terry Cavanaugh have called her like one of the most innovative game designers out there right now. She has such a strong identity when it comes to making her games. There's something about her games that I just can't describe right now, and I hope to figure out with this recording of this episode what I exactly want to describe her work as, because right now, I'm at the most exciting part about discovering a new artist, which is not being able to describe their work in full detail, but wanting to learn more about it. Do you have an experience with Sylvie, Offer?
First off, I want a quick clarification. Do you say that she's working on games as a day job or in addition to a day job?
In addition to a day job.
Okay, yeah. I have heard of Sylvie. I've not played any of her games, but I know that they have a reputation for being unconventional and for really encouraging the kind of friction that has been abandoned in a lot of more mainstream game development, like Coyote Time, the platforming trick where you can jump a little bit after you leave a platform, which is standard in basically every platformer now, is something that she's like very strongly against. I've seen a lot of her social media and like interviews talking about how much she hates that stuff.
I will say, one of her games is Coyote Time, and you're gonna love it when you see it. If you see it.
Okay. I also know that she has a bump combat thing, and I love bump combat. That's seen in the first Ys game. I haven't played another game that has bump combat. A lot of people really hate it, but I loved it, so I want to see more of that as well. So yeah, I'm excited about Sylvie's games. Am I as excited for it as Elf Bowling? I don't know, but we'll have to see.
Well, one's an artist and the other one's a sham, and I think we know which one is which. As always, I'm Galvan.
And I'm Author Function.
Thanks for listening.